Alright guys, I know you've been seeing me play a little less Destiny on stream, and I guess it's time I announced that I have finally decided to quit forever. If I'm not able to use Mountaintop until my 30th birthday, I just don't see the point in playing Destiny anymore. I mean, I've just been playing my favorite game for 3 to 13 hours a day like any other normal kid, and out of nowhere, Bungie completely blindsides me with this horrible new mechanic that heartlessly abandons all of my most sentimentally treasured gear for the sake of ensuring the player experience continues to be engaging and dynamic as new activities and loot are introduced. Well, Bungie, now you've really crossed the line. I quit. For real this time. Well, I don't quit myself, but I am seeing a disproportionate number of people getting upvoted for saying as much, and so I want to talk about it. Just so we're clear, this isn't the first time we've had to leave gear behind in Destiny, guys, and giving them backlash over this new sunsetting is pretty much throwing a tantrum because something that we always knew had an expiration date is expiring. It makes me feel like I need to sit down and talk with these people pitching a fit, if only to ask them one simple question. Did you really think we were going to keep using the same gear we have now for the rest of Destiny? We were just going to infuse our recluses and hand out Season of Dawn armor all the way up to level 2000 power over the next 4 years? Is that really the most exciting future for Destiny that you can envision? No? Okay, then, calm down. The only alternative to gear staying at max power forever is gear not staying at max power forever, which Bungie has implemented in the form of sunsetting. This had to happen one way or another, so the fact that you could still use your old gear in most PvP modes forever if you want, if you really like Recluse that much, it is not the oncoming disaster that Reddit seems to think it is. You aren't losing anything, so again, I implore you, think a little bit harder before rioting, because all this does is make it look like Reddit gives premature, impulsive, ultimately ignorant feedback. See, the thing is, Infusion has always been a band-aid. Destiny is extremely demanding in terms of development effort for new content. Releasing an entire new game's worth of stuff every few years or major expansions at a minimum is a huge undertaking. The sounds and visuals in Destiny strive for a level of realism that you don't see anywhere else in the realms of evolving world games, specifically because it is very demanding to produce that way. Taking all of this into account and seeing the content-light, unsatisfying year that we've had so far, it's pretty obvious what's happening. Bungie intends to give us less content every season until new Eververse cosmetics are the only new content and we're forced to buy them to continue enjoying fun on the video game. Or more realistically, a major content drop is in the works, and we've been allowed to infuse our gear for as long as we have because Bungie is well aware that the content we've been playing since Forsaken isn't their strongest work, so forcing us to grind to stay relevant would have felt terrible. I think Bungie believes the content that they're planning to release in September is good enough that by the time it arrives, we won't even be thinking about sunsetting. But why would we trust them? Because historically, we've had to leave our gear behind in Destiny 1 Year 2, Destiny 2, and Destiny 2 Year 2, so you'll determine that deserted duds are declared when Destiny's depiction develops decidedly. There was protest over leaving gear behind at those points as well, but regardless of that backlash, the game continues to draw in perfectly healthy numbers. That's because, despite their flaws, Bungie usually manages to deliver when it comes to major releases to the point that the good completely outweighs the bad, and I'm definitely not labeling Destiny 2 Year 1 as a good time in the franchise. It was so full of bewildering mistakes that I always have to seriously consider the possibility that Destiny and therefore my career might spontaneously self-destruct at any major turn now, so that's pretty lit. But even considering those flaws, it was a huge content drop that made the game fun to play again. Keep in mind, Destiny ran for 3 years before they took the plunge and launched Destiny 2, and now, after 3 years of Destiny 2 content, it's about time for something big to happen. Had Bungie still been in a contract with Activision, this is about the time that we would be seeing Destiny 3. Now, does that mean that we can expect a Destiny 3-sized expansion in September? I don't know, I couldn't tell you that for sure. But I consider an outcome like that much more likely than another Shadowkeep year. Here's where the Destiny Reddit community really loses me though. Rather than anticipating the newest gear might actually be fun to grind this fall, apparently these guys genuinely want new gear to be used as infusion fuel for the gear they've been using for the past 24 months. There is such little trust that Bungie might actually make something cool again, as if all the fun gear and content has been accidental or something, that they're taking sunsetting as the unilateral cancellation of their fun insurance policy. It's such an unreasonably bleak outlook. Do these guys really think Bungie has no intentions of ever wowing us again? That rehashing Trials is the best and most creative thing the studio is capable of now? Listen dudes, the game being not at its best for more than a year is more of a reason to expect something good than bad. Their reputation as a studio is on the line. They know they can't just give us Shadowkeep years forever. I mean, me personally, if Saint 14 gets lost in the corridors of time again, I mean, maybe I save him again, but a third time? Absolutely not. That's where I draw the line. But sunsetting is happening, and how much damage could it really do? Granted, it's possible that we'll feel weaker with the new gear than we do with our old infused gear, but that's still better because at least the gameplay experience will evolve in some way. More importantly, part of the reason we feel as strong as we do is that we have weapons that aren't particularly cool to have in the meta. I don't understand how so many people can whine and moan about Revoker only to do a complete 180 the exact instant Bungie finds a way to take it out of the meta. Same with something like Mountaintop. There are pretty much only two ways this goes. Either the weapons eventually get nerfed to the point that they're shadows of their former selves, or they are retired to non-max power, but get to keep the parts of themselves that are unique and interesting. And the second option, to me, is by far better. And if you think we're too weak now and can't stand to get weaker, that's a problem with game balance as a whole, not weapon sunsetting. I personally don't feel that way, but it's a legitimate viewpoint that comes up pretty often, and Bungie should at least take it into serious consideration. As I said though, that's neither here nor there. Weapon sunsetting and the strength of our characters are obviously separate conversations if you think about it at all, so you shouldn't let anyone convince you otherwise for internet points. You could very easily spin this into Bungie is going to start releasing lots of OP weapons now that they'll be sunset in a year, and it wouldn't be improbable, but my guess is that they intend to keep our power around the same level that it currently is. We're not in a Destiny 2 Year 1 situation, and we're not in a Reckoning Tier 3 situation. Our power balance is not as bad as some people make it out to be. Could it feel better? Sure, but sunsetting is not the focal point of that discussion.
I don't have super yet.
Okay, so on to the next talking point. I was originally planning on going on for a while, talking to the people who this video hasn't convinced yet about how Destiny is a pretty unique game, and it wouldn't be easy to find another game that does the same thing but better, so when people threaten to quit, it comes across as an empty threat. I mean, they're not going to find the perfect game they wish Destiny was. But then I realized, maybe I just need to give them a nudge in the right direction. My dude, I think it's time you showed them you're serious. How many mistakes are you going to ignore? The error codes, the lack of content, the tedious bounty fests? This is not the game you fell in love with anymore. It's time to uninstall. And it's time someone sent the message that Bungie needs to get it together. They can't keep releasing content like they have. We won't stand for it. Quitting is, I think, the only way they'll really understand how bad they've messed up, and it's time to show them that you mean it. Anyway, see you next week. And then there are the people who are absolutely convinced that Bungie just won't be able to make enough weapons and will overly rely on reintroducing old weapons into the pool to make us grind for them again, and to that I say, well, one, they've been doing that, and people are pretty excited about getting Dire Promise and Old Fashioned and Last Hope and Hawthorne's Field Forge and a selection of others, so I'm having a hard time believing that they'd botch it horribly next time around when they so clearly understand the appeal. And two, if they did start relying on it to the point that it really hurt the game experience, that would be a great time to start complaining. We do know that they're going to reuse some old gear, and it's on them to get it right when they reuse it, so now is a good time to express your concerns, but my dudes, your concerns are not foregone conclusions. And on a related note, I am so tired of these posts, forgetting that Season 12 is not just going to be another season like the Season of Dawn. Those "they only make 6 weapons a season" posts just apparently forgot about Shadowkeep, introducing the entire set of weapons from Garden of Salvation, or the Pit of Heresy and Altar of Stars weapons, or the Lectern weapons, or the Vex offensive weapons. Like, please, stop leaning on manipulative rhetoric to score internet points. There will be much more than 6 weapons, and they will be retired on a yearly basis, not every season. I fully understand having low expectations after the year we've had in Destiny, but if you want to bash the game, stick to the stuff they've actually messed up, like lack of activities, overuse of bounties, disjointed storytelling, unfun battle pass implementation following Season of Undying, seasonal loot lockouts, error codes, bad cheat detection, exotic disabling as a first option rather than a last resort, bad quest design, bugged quest design, pretty much outright lying about making sure trials didn't come out unpolished. I mean, the list goes on, take your pick. But the new seasonal weapons are not among the game's problems, and neither is sunsetting to ensure that we don't just completely ignore the next set of practically exotic tier weapons because they aren't 150 RPM. I'm not even saying that weapon sunsetting is going to be awesome either, just to be clear. I just don't think it's going to be awful. I think the reality here is that it's a necessary evil for an evolving game, and honestly, it's not that exciting. It's not that good, it's definitely not that bad, it's necessary, and as far as changes are concerned, it's kinda boring. So instead of being bored, let's light Reddit on fire. Yeesh. I guess I'm kinda getting off track here. At this point, I've just struggled to make this video because there are so many individual comments on Reddit and Twitter that I wanted to respond to as talking points, but it just got overwhelming and disorganized. So I'm gonna go ahead and recap all the points I really feel need to be made. Sunsetting is nothing new. More likely than not, active players would probably want to use the new gear anyway, even if sunsetting weren't a thing. That's usually how it goes. Our characters aren't necessarily getting weaker. We might even get stronger. No way to be sure right now, but we'll just have to wait and see what the fall expansion looks like it's going to bring. Armor sunsetting may be tedious for less dedicated players. If that's the hill you're prepared to die on, that one does actually make some sense. My take though, I'm going to guess that between all the reward sources in the game and the new redacted engram that you can focus the drops of, it won't be too horrible to play to replace that gear. I feel like the larger problem here is the high cost of upgrading the gear, combined with the lack of fun activities that we'd play just for enjoyment right now anyway. I think in practice, acquiring new gear would be a lot more pain-free than people think. I really can't stress this last point enough. Gear sunsetting is going to be putting its roots in at the same time as a fall expansion. It's not coming in Season 11. They announced it to us now in Season 10. We've got another full season before we actually have any weapon sunsetting, and that's because when Season 12 rolls around, it will probably be a bigger deal. They probably aren't telling us about it right now because they don't want to distract our attention from the upcoming season that they haven't really talked about either. But I guarantee you, as we get closer to fall, we're going to see a lot more hype for it, and the talk about sunsetting is going to grind to a halt. We have all the reason in the world to expect that the game will be in one of those honeymoon periods where we're all just excited to play. So the backlash that they're getting now is 100% falling on deaf ears, because they probably expected everybody to react badly, and they probably know that people will not care later. Anyway, if it feels like you've been talked to like a child in this video, that's because Reddit sometimes collectively behaves like a large child. Let's go explore some of the comments and respond to them in video format instead of attempting to have a conversation, because my brain cells simply aren't designed to handle that. So this comment is gilded with more than 1,000 upvotes, and all I can think is that it's an incredible showcase of just how jaded the Destiny Reddit community is. The level of optimism he compares is definitely overzealous in both cases, and I can see why you'd not take those people seriously, but the fact that this poster seemingly thinks static weapon rolls and sunsetting weapons are comparable levels of oncoming disaster is so unbelievably misguided. You can tell it's a terrible post just on account of the fact that the poster basically says people who think sunsetting is going to be awful called every shot Bungie made, while also saying he thinks sunsetting is going to be awful, which is directly implying he knows exactly how the future will go when he hears about changes, because he's just so smart that he borders on infallible. Also, at the same time, this person is clearly implying he's smarter than anyone in the position to make decisions at Bungie, because he wouldn't make mistakes if he was the one making the decisions. Somehow, that level of conceit isn't enough to dissuade people from upvoting, because as long as it's articulate and cynical at the same time, Reddit eats it up. Moral of the story, I sincerely hope that if sunsetting is not a disaster come September, like I am expecting, that this poster can swallow their pride and humble up a little bit, but they probably won't, because Reddit gives this kind of behavior a generous portion of positive attention when they're mad, and that's deeply unfortunate. Wait, what am I doing? Why read Reddit comments and publicly blast them for how hopelessly lost they are, when I can just ignore them and only read my beautiful, intelligent, well-measured YouTube comments? That sounds way better. Thanks for watching. Have a good day, everyone except people who thinks NTS words are fun.
We're at 9 minutes. So probably wasn't going to be a sub 10.